What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Soft Cell. And we're continuing through Cruelty Without Beauty 2002 after taking a brief detour to listen to the extended mix of Torch. And once again, thank you to Kim for both the material and the guidance when it comes to this Soft Cell journey, which still has much to go, thankfully. And yeah, the next tune is the paradoxical Together Alone. Obviously, those two words are, in their fundamental semantics, diametric opposites. To be together is to be connected to, in league with, or otherwise associated with another person, and maybe present in a physical sense as well, whereas alone is to be isolated, is to be singular and disconnected from others. So I do wonder if both aspects of this are functioning at the same time, meaning being among other people but also being isolated or marooned psycho-emotionally or mentally. So I wouldn't be surprised if the paradoxical and seemingly contradictory or even oxymoronical title is actually literally true in both respects. So let's see what I can catch on a first listen. This is Soft Cell. The tune is Together Alone, and it's from their 2002 album Cruelty Without Beauty.
Remembering times I think
Another awesome soft cell tune, and another one that had me riveted trying to figure out the lyrics here. I'll start with the sonics. So, I love the driving but heavy, dark, almost menacing sonics, though they do get a bit more, I don't want to say bright, I think that's overstating it, but they get a bit more consonant in the chorus, and then the verses it goes back to that heavy, bass line shifting, almost like lurking, on the prowl, looking for prey type of feel in the verses. And the mostly like it seemed to be a mixture of more like electronic sounds and more like natural instrument sounds. Obviously there's that, I think there's actually two different ones, but there's some string flourishes or like rhythmic string melodies throughout parts of the track. There's also like some, piano sounding chords. There was that, like, at first it almost sounded like this really soft like sonar pulse, and then it kind of flourished a little bit more. It was like this little melodic flourish kind of in the middle of the track. That was catching my ear. There were some bleeps, like more electronic sounding touches I noticed at a couple moments, and the bass line, it had that like electrified synth bass sound to it. But again, overall it sort of had a mixture of like more overtly electronic synth pop sounds and then some elements that are like at least built on natural instruments. Now again, maybe the strings are like synth strings, but definitely I like the balance of those elements. Marc's voice, great, of course. A couple moments where he does that, extension, melodic bending, and, just kind of flourishing in his own charismatic way. I enjoyed those moments, but a lot of the vocals, especially in the chorus, sounded, again, a bit dark, a bit, dangerous, like he's on, again, the prowl, or he's lurking about. Lyrically, I'm intrigued, and I feel like there's a few different ways I'm inclined to take this. Like, my first thought, once the first verse and chorus for the first time started playing out, it's like, oh, is this like a dissociative identity disorder situation where it's like two personalities, two minds, but in the same brain? And some of the lines, I think, give me that suggestion in any case. It's like he's a shadow, and what was the, like, something on the edge of his eye, like, and there's, it's just me here, like, two of a kind. I feel like there's some lines that really fit with the idea that it's, again, like, personalities. And there was a line, something like, without you, I couldn't have survived. So the idea that maybe this second personality emerged in a way to, like, help the regular or initial personality deal or cope with reality, which incidentally, and I don't know how much crossover there would be here, but I'm going through an anime watch along on my Patreon for Akama no Riddle, and one of the characters, that's essentially what happened. She had trauma when she was a child, and this second personality developed and kind of, dragged the other one along and, like, kept her alive when the normal personality might have given up. So that's one way I took it. But then another way I took it is maybe this is like a memory of another person who's not around anymore, and so he's carrying on this other figure by essentially making him part of his own psyche. Not unlike Norman Bates in Psycho. Sorry, spoiler alert, I know. The movie's been out for a while, so I won't feel too bad about that. But yeah, I wondered if it's like he's carrying on this persona even though the person's actually dead. And in fact, James Vanderbeek's been in the news recently. He was on two episodes of Criminal Minds where he played this really crazy unsub, and it was the same thing where his dad had been like a sort of religious fanatic and abusive, and then he died, but he was like the only authority figure he ever knew, and the only way he could cope with it is to internalize his dad's persona. So he would vacillate back and forth between kind of mellow young guy just wanted to go on the internet and play games or whatever, and this like militant, hyper-religious killer that was his dad's persona. So, yeah, I did wonder if it was something like that, which I guess would it would encompass the first interpretation of the dissociative identity disorder, but based on a real person, not just like an invented persona. And then the third possibility is that he's actually talking about another person who's in close proximity lying next to him at night in his life, and yet there's this separation even as they're in another way, like one and the same person. They're together alone, they're always together, but they're miles apart at the same time. I consider that third interpretation the least likely, and that probably means it'll actually be the one that is valid. Nevertheless, I enjoyed trying to follow and track and interpret the lyrics, and I enjoyed the way the sonic tones seemed to match the danger and tension or uncomfortability of what I was getting from the lyrics. So, yeah, a really compelling tune. I'm loving this updated soft cell, meaning it doesn't sound like in the details musically there's stuff from the 80s, but it still sounds unmistakably like soft cell, and not just because of Marc's voice. So it's like there's continuity and yet distinction, and ultimately I'm looking forward to continuing forward. And I know they released an album not all that long ago, so when we get there we'll see if that continues. But yes, more to go between now and then. Once again, shout out to Kim as well as to Solo and others who've been part of this deep dive from the very beginning, and Marc as well, who's provided a lot of great comments on their songs and lyrics. So looking forward to reading any insight. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.